in 1950 when we had a little tiny television set, and that was one of the first TVs. And by now we were supposed to have flying cars. Well,
yeah, I'm waiting for those too.
Yeah.
But
it seems that there's a pent-up evolution that's coming, almost like a wave of advancing that's coincidental with our consciousness that is occurring right now, that will completely transform our experience and the planet.
Well, only if we bring it in and embody it, because I think what a lot of spiritual people have forgotten or didn't get in the first place is that the next level of spiritual evolvement is not kissing the face of God. We've been there, done that. It's the old saying of what happens when you become enlightened, it's chop wood, carry water.
Right.
That's when the mundane becomes sacred.
Yes.
And that's how heaven becomes earth.
Wow. And we are the channels for that by grounding ourselves into Gaia and with Gaia and working with it and bringing these higher energies in, we can help bring heaven to earth. Is that, am I grasping that?
Yes, very, very well. The other aspect to that is that the higher consciousness we all feel we're moving towards and we feel we need requires a higher energy. It's like fossil fuels can't take us any further into the future now. The old energy, the old school has brought us as far as it can bring us, but it can't do the next step for us.
And we're kind of being, it seems that from my perspective, that we're being pressed at the very end of this process, almost squeezed, to come to this realization with, the nuclear power plants breaking down and polluting the oceans and the oil things and so on and so forth. They're just not sustainable anymore, and neither is the idea of an infinite growth and hoarding of money and power. So it seems that's all breaking down right now.
Well, it's a natural evolution. It's very natural for children to grow up. And if you've noticed, the billionaires from the first billionaire, I think the first billionaire was in his 70s. Bill Gates was one of the youngest billionaires, and now we have the guy with Facebook that's the youngest billionaire in history. We're probably going to see a teenage billionaire next. But this is important because money is becoming spiritualized. It's green energy. It's beautiful green energy. And I was told by the light that one of the main signs to look for, too, is when we see truly enlightened beings entering into the Fortune 500.
Oh, that would be nice.
Wouldn't that be interesting?
That would be wonderful. Well, I'll be watching for that.
Yeah, me too.
I'm not going to hold my breath, but no.
Well, it's happening right before our eyes.
You're right.
And one of the beautiful things about the guy that started Facebook is he invested in the Tesla car company gigantically.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Bill Gates could start a electric car company, which is, electric cars are the fastest thing we can do to improve the environment right now.
Yeah.
They've been proven they work. People want them. But, Bill Gates, I say, email these people. Bill Gates could afford to start an electric car company. So could the Dalai Lama, who has vast wealth and investments. So could the Pope, who has vast wealth and investments. Why aren't these groups doing this?
Good question.
Email them. Ask them.
Yeah, good. That's very good. Maybe they're starting a movement here tonight. It's about time for them to loosen up the coffers and, take care of the rest of humanity, because we are all interconnected. We are all one. And what we do to another person, we're doing to ourselves. And,
the beautiful yin-yang of that is that they could become even more wealthy and do even more great projects.
Right.
It wasn't that long ago that the Catholic Church gets audited every once in a while, and they discovered they owned a birth control pill company. They don't even know what they were investing in.
They probably don't even know how much they have.
But those, that's the old way.
Right.
And so everything is totally possible. If you saw the movie Who Killed the Electric Car?
Yes, I did.
Well, you've got Mel Gibson, the movie star, who's a billionaire, crying about they took his electric car away. Well, Mel, start an electric car company.
Well, he also did conspiracy theory, too.
Yeah. And
so he should be putting his money where his mouth is.
So it's interesting that all this potential is here. It's here for the first time. It may not have been here 100 years ago, 300 years ago. It certainly wasn't here 1,000 years ago, but it's here now, which is beautiful.
Yeah, wonderful. One of the things that you said, you talked about, and you do talk about in your CDs and on your experience, you talk about the higher self matrix and how our higher selves are all, you'll say it better than I can remember, but that they're encircling the globe and they're all interconnected. So is it like we're kind of like the puppets down here on Earth that are kind of dancing to the higher selves that are all communicating and we're just saying our lines?
Absolutely not. No way, shape, or form.
Oh, okay. All right.
As it turns out, there's only one higher self for the entire planet.
Oh.
Every living thing, every rock, every living thing, every leaf on every tree is all the same being.
Oh.
And so that light at the end of the tunnel near-deathers talk about is that higher self matrix that we all go to. And it's very important, as we go to that light, people have life reviews, but that life review is the only judgment you're ever going to get because it's the most critical judgment. It's self-judgment. And believe me, when you're there, you'll get it. But the other thing is, every time you've died and reincarnated, as you've had that life review, you've downloaded your entire experience into that Oversoul Matrix, and then every one of us that passed through that is even more enlightened by all the experience. So the experience is cumulative, and it's this collective consciousness is adding up to something fantastic.
Wow. That sounds encouraging. I like that. I was also surprised, speaking of this, that you actually stopped your near-death experience. You halted it when you were going towards the light and said, wait a minute. So tell us about that.
Well, before I had my experience until several years afterwards, I had never heard the word near death in my life. I never even heard the word hospice till I ended up in one. That's pretty thick. And it was only when I went to a lecture by Phyllis Atwater, PMH Atwater, the famous writer on the near-death subject and researcher. When I saw her lecture and met her, I said, I think that happened to me. And she and I have been friends ever since. She introduced me then to Dr. Ken Ring, who studied over 10,000 or more cases. And they were surprised. Of course, I hadn't met any other near-deathers at that time. They were surprised that at one point in my experience when I was with the light, I asked the light to stop, and I realized this was an interactive experience, and the light agreed with me. What we call the death or rebirth experience is just as interactive as the life you're living right now. And as far as they know, I'm the first that did that. But somebody had to do it sooner or later.
Wow, yeah, right, right. Wake up and realize, well, wait a minute.
And the light is the most gracious thing in the world, our Oversoul Matrix, because, when I said, hold on a minute here, can we talk about this? The light said, sure, what you got? And I had a lot of questions, believe me. I had a lot of questions to ask.
I bet. I wish we had a recording of that conversation.
I think we'll probably figure out some sort of technology sooner or later.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Take your webcam with you or something. I don't know. Really?
It's a little cameras.
Yeah.
Well, so you went also beyond the universe and into the void as well. So there are... I remember you talking about the soft booms, which are like organic divisions between the universes, or what? Maybe
it's like crossing the sound barrier, things like that.
Okay.
But once I'd asked all my questions and all my questions had been answered to my total understanding. I mean, my questions, not your questions.
Right.
We all have different set of questions. Then I asked the universe to pull the veil. I wanted to see what else was out there, and I went on a fantastic a trip. Seems like it took a second now, but I'll probably take me the rest of my life to tell you the whole story.
Wow.
But in that experience, I learned that and I was saying this long before scientists were saying it, that I learned there was more than one Big Bang. In fact, the Big Bang is sort of a bad word for this. You know, the Big Bang word came from the only guy that didn't believe it. He was putting it down, and they used his word. But there's more than one universe. It's infinite, and there's been many what we call Big Bangs and ongoing, and in fact we're just beginning to maybe even be able to grapple with the concept of no beginning and no end.
Wow.
And so and I checked, not even God knows where this began, and there's no end. It's this incredible continuum. So in the void, and it took me, a long time to assimilate my experience afterwards. But there are these great voids between things. It's like it's interesting because in every atom there's a nucleus, and then there's electrons and things orbiting those atoms. There's more space between the core of that atom and the outer orbit of the electrons per se than from here to Jupiter. And so you can go into these voids, and the voids are absolutely devoid of experience. And that was interesting. And I tell people to this day I have no words for that because there are no words for it. The yogis have tried to explain that to us. There are no words for some of these things.
Oh yeah, some of the Buddhists, I believe, their highest aspiration is to enter the void.
Well, it's easy, but it's like nothing. If you want to,
I think it'd be kind of boring after a while, wouldn't it?
That's I heard something that I really like, and it was why is Earth one of the most popular incarnational destinations for you to come to? Have you heard that one?
No, what?
That's because you incarnate here when you need a vacation from eternal bliss.
Oh.
You're not gonna get it here. You can have all that you want, but you're gonna get bored with it.
Yeah, really, no kidding. Oh my goodness. Well, now you also saw many other civilizations, and lots of my guests talk about various what does he call them? ET civilizations. Anyway, my mind seems to be blanking out tonight. I'm vast gaps in my data banks. But,
are you in the void?
Yeah, I think I'm in the void. But you also saw other civilizations, and we're surrounded with life, aren't we? I mean, to think that we're just this little globe and we're it is just the height of hubris, isn't it?
Yes, it really is, but what's interesting about all life in the universe, which I found fascinating, is that life as we know it, that we can communicate with, is fairly rare. I mean, just in our galaxy there may be 10 billion of us, 10 billion planets like us, but life in general, there's life way ahead of us, life way below us, but life in general, most of the life in the entire universe is microbial. By far. Just like most of life on Earth is microbial, most of the cells in your body is microbial. So we might look at this microbial intelligence that's at the base of everything and look at it a little differently. Cleve Baxter could communicate with bacteria, and you read his work and you can learn to do this. Bacteria turns out are very intelligent, and if there are 7 trillion of our 10 trillion cells, they control our hormones. We have sweet tooth. There's so much that these microbes and their consciousness affects our lives every day. But with our primitive understanding of what life is, we think life is us. Period.
Right.
When it's really a lot more. It's more dynamic than that.
Yeah. Do you think we'll learn how to communicate in terms of disease with our bodies and communicate with our cells and even down to the bacterial level at some point?
Well, we've been doing this since ancient times. I mean, the shamans have done it. There's great examples of this all around us everywhere. Cleve Baxter did it scientifically to prove, I guess, that it could be done on that level too. But shamans have known this. Great masters have known these things, and there's great intelligence in everything. After I used to think the world was a really stupid place, but after my near-death experience, I always assume that someone is super intelligent, unless proven otherwise.
Now, one thing that I think a lot of people don't understand very clearly is that there is everything that we do is recorded in a holographic kind of and with Gaia and working with it and bringing these higher energies in, we can help bring heaven to earth. Is that am I grasping that?
Yes, very, very well. The other aspect to that is that the higher consciousness we all feel we're moving towards and we feel we need requires a higher energy. It's like fossil spiritual evolvement is not kissing the face of God. We've been there, done that. It's the old saying of what happens when you become enlightened, it's chop wood, carry water.
Right.
That's when the mundane becomes sacred.
Yes.
And that's how heaven becomes earth.
Wow. And we are the channels for that by grounding ourselves into God.
Fuels can't take us any further into the future now. The old energy, the old school has brought us as far as it can bring us, but it can't do the next step for us.
And we're kind of it seems that from my perspective, that we're being pressed at the very end of this process, almost squeezed of advancing. That's coincidental with our consciousness that is occurring right now, that will completely transform our experience and the planet.
Well, only if we bring it in and embody it, because I think what a lot of spiritual people have forgotten or didn't get in the first place is that the next level.
In 1950, when we had a little tiny television set, and that was one of the first TVs, and by now we were supposed to have flying cars. Well,
I'm waiting for those too.
Yeah,
but
it seems that there's a pent-up evolution that's coming, almost like a wave.